You're tuned into the big story here on the BDTV Breakfast Show. This is where we get to discuss key issues shaping our nation and our economy at large. My name is Elizabeth Musa. Today we will examine the effect of the persistent insecurity in Benue State on the country's economy. Benue State, often referred to as the food basket of the nation, plays a critical role in Nigeria's agricultural economy. But in recent years, persistent insecurity driven by farmer-herder clashes, armed attacks and mass displacements has crippled farming activities, disrupting rural livelihoods and threatening national food supply chains. As thousands flee their farmlands and agricultural output declines, the economic ripple effects are being felt far beyond Benue's borders. Now, this morning we'll be discussing this and so much more. We're questioning how the deepening insecurity in Benue State is undermining Nigeria's food security, Nigeria's economic stability, and even its development prospects. What are the financial costs of this conflict? Who bears the brunt? And what must be done to restore peace and productivity in this vital region? Our guest today is Dr. Oluyemi Adeosun, Business Day's Chief Economist. Welcome to the show, Dr. Adeosun.
Thank you so much. Good morning, listeners. Great to be here again.
It's so good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us in spite of the technological challenges this morning. Let me start by asking you, how significant is Benue State in Nigeria's agricultural economy, and how has this insecurity disrupted the role of Benue State in Nigeria's agricultural economy?
Thank you so much. Again, I think it's just appropriate to extend our condolences to all the people who have lost a loved one or multiple loved ones, and we pray that God will grant, peace to the souls of those that have passed, and moving on away from that, from your introduction, you rightly highlighted the fact that Benue State is the food basket of the nation. And this is not a cliche. I happen to stay in Benue briefly, and I've been there a couple of times. We have multiple food crops, for example, yam, soya beans, rice, and so many other things, even livestock, that are produced, cultivated, nurtured in Benue State. If you take Benue State, in isolation, agriculture, it's about 70% of the GDP of Benue State itself. It's a major producer of cassava, sesame seed, citrus fruits, and so on and so forth. A lot of land. So from an unemployment perspective, agriculture is the mainstay. So if people cannot farm, that leads to what? Even higher or more significant unemployment. It leads to loss of income, loss of livelihood, and then it's a revenue loss, even from the government perspective. Don't forget that when you ship out these agricultural products, there are certain levies and taxes that even the state government can derive. And of course, ultimately, food insecurity. So I think it's a big challenge in terms of economy, displaced rural labor. Of course, what that will happen is more and more people it will increase rural-urban migration for legitimate reasons, because you need to stay alive to be a farmer. So I would just say that the output, in terms of economic output, agricultural output, has reduced significantly. And Benue and Nigeria, and even the sub-region, is losing out big time.
Right, Dr. Adeosun, just to put it very more concisely, in terms of economic losses, can you quantify in terms of agricultural output or GDP, just
Okay.
the resulting the amount precisely?
So the data for this is easy, but let's put it in naira and kobo, and this is a very rough estimate. From different sources, the potential annual loss can range between 30 to 50 billion naira. I know that may be a huge range, but is that significant? Between 30 to 50 billion naira, that's the potential loss in terms of agricultural output due to insecurity from Benue alone. And I have good credible sources to back up this data. It's also important to know that food and agriculture are a critical factor in inflation. So Benue insecurity right now is one of the leading causes with respect to increments in food prices and ultimately inflation generally. Then that's also a big economic loss. You know what inflation means? Everybody's losing value unnecessarily, especially when it is avoidable and due to man-made causes. So the conflict contributes at least 10% of the food inflation. That's what I would like to say right now, because they are a big player when it comes to yam, when it comes to soya beans, and these are major staple in Nigerian food, generally speaking, and also even in our food exports.
And how would you describe the implications of this displacement of farmers and rural communities on food production and food prices nationally?
Thank you so much. You know, we've had roughly put maybe 1.5 million people displaced in the last decade, because this incidents didn't just start today. This has been something that has been building up over the years, and it has significantly led to reduction in supply from one of the most productive states agricultural wise. In fact, I'm tempted to say the most productive states. It is not called food basket of the nation for nothing. All right. And when you see our headline inflation, food is a vital component of it. And at over 20-something%, it doesn't augur well for anybody. And also very critically, food insecurity is compounded. And you know, food insecurity is a major driver. It can lead to anything. When people are hungry, when people are starving, when people use almost all their disposable income just for food, it can make people susceptible to crime and other vices. All right. And of course, it's also worsening the urban rural. Don't forget that recently the World Bank told us about, in quotes, how our rural poverty is worsening. This insecurity is part of the key contributing factors to the increasing poverty levels in the rural community.
And how do we actually address this? You know, you've spoken a lot about insecurity, food security. How do we actually address this challenge now that we'll be facing, especially with this Benue crisis, in terms of food security and self-sufficiency? How do we address it?
So it's a multi-dimensional approach that we need. Again, one solution may not suffice. In no particular order, of course, we must strengthen security. And by security, I mean both police, military, local vigilante, okay? And we must also sustain and encourage community-based peace building. For example, dialogue, engagement. People don't just fight just because they want to fight. What are the root causes? Do we need, for example, to look at the Ministry of Livestock? How can they create ranches or create grazing paths? And then how can we enforce that those grazing paths and those ranches are strictly adhered to? Then consequence management. You know, you can't just be going to other people's farm without consequences, and you can't also just be attacking herdsmen without consequences. So we also need to look at the displaced farmers over the years, not just in this particular season or window. Rehabilitation is key. Reintegration of displaced farmers is also key. Then again, we need to focus more on rural infrastructure. You will remember that I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, the president could not visit a particular location because of bad roads. This is an opportunity to drive road, rail, and other electricity infrastructure development, because it will make information more accessible and people can call for help. Again, do we want to rethink our secure ranching and our grazing reserves? If we can do it to protect lives and properties, I think any other cost is bearable, except the loss of life. We may also want to consider things around agricultural risk insurance, because not only are people losing their lives, crops is being wasted. So how can we look at concessioning financing for Benue-based agribusiness, especially if they need to come back and they need to also relaunch? Then we may also consider collaboration between state governments, Benue State, for example, and the neighboring states. Don't forget that some of these people doing these attacks are itinerant. They are moving. Some are even moving from outside Nigeria. So we need interstate security collaboration, local vigilante collaboration, and we also need to adopt technology. You can see what's happening in Israel, in Iran, and other climes. We are not too young to start using drones to map and identify strange movement, mass movement, so that we can nip things in the bud. Enough of condolence visits. Thank you.
Right, and just if you could just shed more light to us, for our viewers, on how this crisis is impacting agribusiness investment, rural livelihoods, and just the different value chains in the region. We're talking about transportation, we're talking about market access, we're talking about interstate trade routes, transportation in itself, agribusiness in itself. How much is this crisis affecting the entire value chain?
Thank you for bringing that up. Take, for example, you realize that when foods are produced, they need to be transported to the end users. Now, transportation is a critical value chain. There are transporters, there are mechanics, there are motor boys, and so on and so forth. There are middlemen. Now, one of the things that is happening is that the transporters either are not ready to go because to what end? What are you risking? For what amount of money? And the transporters that are ready to go are now even charging exorbitant prices or taking longer alternative routes. All these things are invariably increasing the cost of food to the ultimate consumer, whether it is in Lagos or in Abuja or in any other part of the country. So we have what we call a negative multiplier effect. If transport buses, lorries, trailers are not working, mechanics will not get jobs. I'm just trying to be as simplistic as possible because so that we can have a bird's eye view of the entire value chain. There's a loss of revenue. Don't forget that when those trucks or lorries are carrying goods, they pay levies at different to different state governments between their origin from Benue and their final destination. So it's a loss across all the entire value chain. This is something we cannot afford. We should be looking at how to enrich the value chain, not how to decimate it even further.
Right, and then when we talk about investor confidence right now, it's definitely dwindled. So what economic risk does this continued instability in Benue State pose to investor confidence, especially in the agricultural sector?
Thank you so much. When we talk about Nigeria, sometimes some people, learned people, almost assume it is Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Kano. But when we talk about agriculture, this is, permit me to use the word, this is the food capital from a production perspective. So any agricultural investor or investment will think twice. Don't forget that except you are an impact investor, even impact investors need returns on their investment. And capital is not always patient. And once you introduce insecurity to the dynamics, it changes a lot of calculations. You cannot even predict, you cannot forecast. So investors will be wary either to move their funds to other states or other clients that have relative stability or to other uses, maybe technology and so on and so forth. So I would say right now, Benue is not a good advertisement or a good attraction for funds. My sister, if it is your money, won't you think twice?
Right. In the interest of time, Dr. Adeosun, because I know you have to go right now, just tell us some of the urgent economic policy interventions that you would recommend so as to restore security and revive the economic activities in this state.
First and foremost, I think we need to have a conversation and multiple conversations. And I'm not talking about aesthetics. I'm talking about art to art. Who are the real stakeholders in Benue? And what are the root causes? What are the genuine grievances? We need dialogue. Peace is actually, so to speak, an economic tool. Peace is an economic tool because without peace, there will be no platform for investment. So we need to get to the root cause. If compensations need to be made, if apologies need to be made, we need to do that. and very quickly too. Again, we need to strengthen and deploy security to strategic locations, and also sometimes, decentralize this security, because it looks like the chain of command may not make the security apparatus responsive, as in timely response. Then we also need to work on intelligence. Okay, security intelligence. We should be able to nip in the bud. We should be able to notice movement, strange movement, large movement, unnatural movement, and ask questions. Okay, because we don't want the citizens to resort to self-help. Again, we need to see how we can support the farmers and the herdsmen who have incurred major losses. How can we support them? Can we give them grants? Can we provide some subsidy? How can we also convince them to go back to the farm safely, so that we don't end up in a famine in the immediate future? Because if we miss a planting season, you are also automatically missing multiple harvest season. So I think we also need to invest in infrastructure, road, rail, security, and the likes. And we need to be intentional. Benue is very essential to Nigeria. Benue is our pride, and we need to support Benue right now and stay on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeosun. Definitely, peace is an economic tool. Thank you for such an informative session this morning. That's all we can accommodate this morning. Thank you so much for watching the BDTV Big Story. My name is Elizabeth Musa. Keep watching BDTV.